We've been Eric Clapton. We got, that's a shout out to my boy Eric Godzi, who loves to throw out the puns. You probably haven't seen it yet. There's Mr. Peabody and Sherman, the movie. They used to be on Rocky and Bullwinkle, but they did a kids movie.
I'm familiar with Peabody and Sherman.
It's nonstop. It's nonstop puns.
Just puns.
So that's pay a little homage to Eric Godzi, who was just on the podcast. We're just talking drugs from the jump.
Right from jump. Yeah.
There's much more than that I want to get into with you because we're obviously doing much more than that.
Right.
But yeah, you're talking surgeries here. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the healing process. I know we touched on that before, but you've had some other surgeries since the last time you were on the show.
Yeah, I've had so we've wrapped it at 9. I feel like that's enough. April 9th this year, I got a total knee replacement. So they chop off the top of the tibia, they chop off the bottom of the femur, replace those parts with metal, back of the kneecap with metal, and then there's a poly piece that kind of goes in as a meniscus, like a spacer. And it's weird compared to the other stuff I did, like ACLs or the high tibial osteotomy or the Oates procedure, any of these other surgeries I'd had, because like you're walking on it that day. And so for me, coming out of chronic pain, like I was out of chronic pain. Now I had surgical pain, right? But I've done it long enough now to know the difference between this is tissue pain that's going to heal and it's stiff from surgery. But my fucking knee doesn't hurt anymore. And I could feel that from jump.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. This is, and that was, I remember going in and talking to my doctor and like being that desperate with where I was with it to say, like, I need some reassurance here that this is the surgery. Like, this is going to make things better, because if it doesn't and things are worse after this surgery than they have been, like, I'm desperate enough, I'm going to figure out how to get rid of the leg. I can't do this anymore. And he was like, I remember just being in tears and talking to him about it, and, just in that backed into a corner, tired. And he's like, we're taking away all the parts that hurt. We're putting in new ones. We're not fixing an old engine with only the parts available. We're putting a new engine in.
Okay.
And I'm like, cool.
I like that.
Well,
that got us on the topic of drugs, and not the psychedelics that I'd like to talk about. we definitely can go that route if necessary, but just these other drugs. And I'm not sure how far I went into it when I did the solo podcast. Was episode 12. We'll link to that in the show notes, where I dive into my battle with depression and attempted suicide right after college. But it really was a cascade of the perfect storm of undealt with shit from my childhood meets no direction or purpose in life meets all the wrong drugs from Big Pharma. And, to put it plainly, I think the ones that felt the best, thankfully I've always been averse to opiates. If I had, I've snorted OxyContin and thrown up for hours and thought, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I could see, before the nausea, how that could be very addictive. Yep. But the ones that I really gravitated towards in college were anti-anxiety meds like Valium, Klonopin, and Xanax. And the reason for that is you feel fucking great.
Because you feel great.
And any anxiety, and again, I've mentioned this, I think, on the last time I was on Rogan's, that this beautiful quote from Dr. Gabor Mate: at the root of all addiction is trauma. At the root of all of it, whether it's a shopping addiction, a sex addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, we have so many different addictions in life, but they all stem from some piece of pain. And thinking about that, anytime we use the Western model to fix that, it's putting patchwork on a ship with holes. It's like just going around and throwing a Band-Aid on it. And if the Band-Aid breaks, you throw another Band-Aid. It doesn't solve the issue. And so, and that's, again, you will hear an argument on both sides of this. Well, SSRIs saved my life. Cool. Well, I'm not taking that from you.
So why not use both?
Yeah, I'm not taking that from you. But to say you have a chronically low serotonin and that needs to be fixed pharmaceutically doesn't address why it became low in the first place. It's not fucking genetics. Genetics are the way our body can manifest disease. They're not a guarantee of disease. Input, output creates disease. So whether that's external environment or internal environment, and that's where the work of Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and Dr. Bruce Lipton, and Greg Braden, and a lot of these other people right now are beginning to put forth scientifically, is that internal environment matters just as much. So if the internal environment is fucked because you haven't dealt with things, and you take anti-anxiety medication to deal with anxiety, it's going to get rid of the anxiety, but it's only patchwork. It doesn't remove the core issue,
but
right?
I think, and that's it. Maybe I'm backwards on this, but I mean, I think anxiety exists for a purpose. Like whether that's some shit I don't have in check, or, you know, I guess I look at it the same way. I almost look at it like, I mean, I get anxiety before I compete. I get anxiety before competitions and stuff like that. But I always treated that as that extra thing that I got to use.
You can use it as excitement.
Yeah. To have that anxiety kind of, you know, people piss and moan about social media and get anxiety from social media and there's problems with it, right? But like your phone and social media don't have an opinion. They don't care. It's the same like metaphor that people use about like heroes and cowards with fire. It's no less dangerous to the hero than it is the coward. And so, I mean, you can either choose to use that fire to forge tools, warm your family, cook all your meals, or you can let it get out of control and burn your fucking house down. The fire doesn't care either way. It's how you decide to manage it. And so using that anxiety and using that little bit of extra, like, okay, let's go get our shit together. Let's stop pushing this off and let's address why we feel this way. Are we unhappy? Was there something that we need to probably go get some therapy for and sort out and work through? Is there a route to plant medicine, or is there medications that we need to use to manage this to get further down the path?
Yeah, as a temporary solution.
Correct.
Right.
You know, that I sometimes I need this to keep moving while we're sorting something out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I mean, you can work through those trauma issues and those problems, you know, while using a dose of something so that you're not locked in.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can create enough space to process.
Right.
The idea is to look at it. The idea is
if you're
to
on
process.
so much that everything's happy and glory, then no, it's not.
Because the issue then is when you get off, all that shit you didn't deal with is still there.
Hey, it's there.
Right? It's
Yeah.
still there. It's still waiting for you. It's still happy to be there. It's still saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Chronic pain.
Yeah. And I think about that, but you were mentioning like if there was one thing from your surgeries you were worried about, it was Versed, right?
Versed, yeah.
Versed, yeah.
So it's essentially the Valium that they give you at the hospital for anxiety because it's amazing. It is. It is just happy. Things are great. Like just pink cloud, just floating around, just as good as can be. And yeah, if I had that as a recreational tool, I'd probably get in trouble. That's the only one I've ever felt that like I have to keep that one way over there.
Yeah.
But other than that, like opiates for me, they serve a purpose. Like I've always been able to, you know, for pain management for me, you know, CBD especially, and for me, smoking CBD is the best way that I find that it manipulates my system. Outside of that, THC and cannabis have been really, really great for me. Even microdosing psilocybin has done a lot for pain management and kind of how I feel about pain. And then, I mean, if I'm done something stupid in the gym and trashed myself and now I'm at an 8 on the pain scale, like that's where Vicodin exist for if I've got them. You know, they're not for the 3.
Yeah.
And so if I'm taking them for 3s, they don't work so good at 8. But if I only need one every 6 weeks, you know, it's a tool. Like it doesn't care. It doesn't have, I mean, we invented these for a purpose, these drugs, and they should be treated with respect the same way. They're not an answer. They're a tool. Like let's get out of pain, not cover up feeling like you're in pain.
Yeah, big time. Let's talk about that too. What are some of the ways you mentioned, obviously, the help from different constituents within cannabis, the microdosing psilocybin, and for people with, it's actually a really cool organization called clusterbusters.org. So for people who suffer from drug-resistant migraines, and these are like the worst scale of migraines, they take high-dose psilocybin, and that's the only thing that gets rid of it.
Wow.
Well, I thought, podcast producer extraordinaire Ryan Giles was just talking about a podcast that Jason Ellis just recorded with Aubrey out in LA. And Aubrey had mentioned to Jason that I had a headache for 48 hours after the fight.
Yeah.
And the only thing that got rid of it was psilocybin. The fucking
just shut it down.
Yeah. And it got rid of it. It didn't manage it. It actually removed the pain in my head.
Wow.
And I had taken ibuprofen, I had taken other things to try to help, and it was still there. You know, it might have numbed it a little bit, but it was still there.
Are you talking microdose level, or are you talking?
For me, it was, probably not a micro, but not a concert dose either. I mean, it's all relative to the person's experience, but it was probably in the range of a gram or two.
Okay.
I had a microdose before the fight of 100 milligrams, and then another 100 milligrams that night once I realized I had a pretty pounding headache. And then the next day when I woke up with it, had a gram or two. And then that was like, that just cut it all out.
So weird. It's like getting punched in the head delivers headaches. Yeah, it's very strange.
That's how it works, especially when you're not used to it.
Tough correlation.
But, again, like there are tools for those things. What are the things outside of that you've done for your knee and hip that really have helped? Obviously we're good buddies with Dr. Kelly Surratt.
Right.
We know about mobility. We know about fascia. We know about unlocking parts of the body to create space for the body so it's not all locked into the joint.
In the knee, there's not a ton, especially with the shape that my knee was in. Once it's bone on bone, like we're not stretching that to get better. Like it's just in bad shape. Really the big stuff that helped me were contrast, hot and cold baths. Ice bath really did a pretty good job of managing like inflammation. And so I really started switching everything to whatever would eliminate inflammation. I've had good luck dietary wise doing vertical diet, like with Stan Efferding and stuff like that. Pretty basic rice, meat, very clean.
Sweet potatoes, chicken, fish,
stuff like that. And that worked well for me as far as maintaining a body weight and getting a little bit leaner as I'm continuing to do it. But it didn't seem to tick off the inflammation the same way that doing keto did for me. And so I've made the switch back to keto within the last month, and it seems to kind of be chilling my hip out a little bit. Now, again, if it's, my hip's feeling pretty good and I decide to do something dumb, and something dumb would be like, so we just got back from 3 weeks in Iceland, and as I landed in Iceland, I got a text from my buddy that we were staying with, Hasey, and he's like, Haffy's having a contest next weekend. They're doing a max log and a max deadlift. I signed you up. And I'm like, oh, all right. Like, well, we're here to party. So I'll get up and manage one day of heavy lifting. And then it felt fine. Didn't have any pain after the contest. Ended up pulling 550 and then just missed like a 319 log. And
that's overhead log press?
Yeah, overhead log press. So glad I had my strongman little bit of background there to play with. But then pulled heavy in his gym a couple weeks later, and my hip just went real bad on me. And I'm like, yep, that was dumb, and that hurts. And so the keto's not going to fix that, but it can definitely, like, I look at everything as just trying to steal a point. If I'm at 90% and if I can steal 1 point from keto and I can steal another point from ice bath and I can steal another point, I can get to 85.
Yeah.
Whatever I can do to knock it down and manage it a little bit. And especially it seems that dietary wise, I'll stay out of inflammation longer. And so if that's the key, then that's the way she's going to ride.
Yeah, that's such a cool point you brought up. It reminds me of this podcast I had with James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits.
Okay.
For sure my favorite book on habits. And I was about to say for sure my favorite book on atomic habits. He's the only guy who's written a book called Atomic Habits. So
yeah, that's the number one atomic habit book on the market.
It's clearly the best.
Yes.
But yeah, he talks about that. As you have a system, say you watch your thoughts like a hawk. You pay attention to what's needed. You prioritize what's needed in life, and you start to tick off these boxes, right? And create new habits around the things that matter most. There can be a gung-ho approach where you want to do everything at once. Some very small sliver of people can actually accomplish that. Most people do better when they bring in one new habit change at a time, right? Because the goal isn't to master any single one thing. It's to gain 1% in each category.
Right.
And if you do that, that's where this thing umbrellas out into a balloon of gains in all directions.
Yep.
In a balloon of systematically approaching life differently that affects all things, because there's a slight improvement everywhere.
Yeah, and enough slight improvements yield a big change.
Big time.
And then I kind of look at that too is like, well, then all of my eggs aren't in one basket of like, well, if I drink this miracle shake every morning, I feel pretty good. But shit, I don't have the miracle shake because I'm traveling. Now I'm fucked. Like, so instead, I don't always have access to an ice bath. I don't always have access to the sauna or hot tub, but I can choose what I eat every day. Keto's the easiest thing to do while traveling of all the different diets I've ever messed with.
I think you might be the first person to have said that.
What are you talking about?
Explain that.
So,
explain that.
As traveling, carbs are not terribly sneaky. They look like rice and potatoes and cupcakes and cookies.
And sugary salad dressing.
And if you're going to have to eat out, restaurants use fat because it's delicious and it makes everything taste better. So you can't avoid fat eating out. There's just no way you're going to ask them to boil a chicken breast. Why did you even go out? So order a ribeye. Every restaurant serves a meat. So get that. And if it's not enough, get a second one.
Every have a burger without a bun. That's cheap.
Go eat wings. Like those are easy to look at and be like, there's nothing on my plate here that's a carbohydrate. Let's avoid those. And I mean, chicken wings and ribeyes or whatever you want to do, just don't eat bread. And I find it the simplest thing for travel.
Yeah, even if you're not quite keto macros, that's something I noticed because of like carnivore works.
Yes.
It's not something I want to stay on the rest of my life. And I fucking love condiments. But
Yes.
there are low carb condiments.
Yeah, called mayonnaise.
And Primal Kitchen makes a fucking damn good mayo. Absolutely essential. But I think about those things and it's
and maybe I'm making a mistake there saying keto when what I mean
low
is
carb,
high fat.
Yeah.
Now I haven't tracked whether or not I'm in ketosis in years. But as long as I'm feeling better and my markers of do I feel better? How's inflammation? How does my body feel? Is the scale going the right direction?
Yeah. Plus, I think as the longer you keep with that, as a physically fit person who's got a fucking jacked frame,
right,
you're going to process protein at a much higher rate than most people, right? So those macros and differences in numbers are going to look way skewed in somebody's like your body because of your activity and how much muscle you have just to maintain that level of fitness. You're going to be utilizing more protein and not necessarily going into gluconeogenesis and causing, the issues around energy systems. Like, I don't have any carbs, but I'm not using fat for fuel. It's like, you don't need to fucking think about that.
Well, also I consume enough caffeine that it offsets any of that lack of energy.
And that mobilizes fat, right? So
caffeine's great for anybody.
There you go.
The biggest stuff that I've started, trying to tell people now, and especially like as I'm getting more into a teaching capacity and less of an athlete, like dietary wise, I try to boil things down to very simple. It's like, look, man, maybe keto's not for you. Maybe this is too complicated, but like, let's keep your calories below this number if we're going to even track that. And then outside of that, like, how about just be able to identify everything on your plate as a single ingredient? Good luck fucking that up. Like that is cow. It's not a mystery. Like it's not a processed thing. Like have a steak, have some shrimp, have, whatever else works for you. But salads, like, people get so caught up with the keto thing, especially when it comes to something like fruit. That's the big loophole of we've all been told fruit's healthy and this and that. And to quote Wendler, it's like, I've yet to see some 600-pound monster cut out of their house surrounded by apple peels and, apple cores and banana peels. Fruit wasn't the problem. Fruit's not what's keeping you fat, I promise. It's the other 200 things that we're eating.
Yeah.
And so, if you can keep the processed stuff out, I think that really is what makes the big difference. And I think that's why our grandparents drank and smoked and lived with some serious vices, but lived to be in their 90s. And our parents who got on TV dinners are sick. Like,
Hungry Man. That was my jam when I was young.
And it's not their fault. This was a miracle. You're talking about a generation that followed the Great Depression that all of a sudden now has food that never goes bad and you can microwave all of it. Like, this is great. We just didn't know. But now we do. And once you know, you don't get to unknow it. Like, that's not how this works. So make the change. Same deal with any of the other bullshit we think is happening with around the world. It's like, once you know, you not knowing is a choice.
Yeah. You can't forget that.
No, kind of one. It's like being self-aware. You don't get to go back.
Yeah. It's like the Matrix.
Yep.
You take the pill once you choose.
Yeah, you can lie to yourself, but that's your call.
So I wanted to talk with you. We were just outside looking at your gorgeous Tundra, which is outfitted. It has been so for
the
years.
Fundra.
The Fundra.
Yeah.
And you've been working on this for years.
A few years now, yeah.
Yeah. Just explain the impetus to create what has become the ultimate travel car. Because I look at people like Simon Rex, Dirt Nasty, his good buddy. He bought an old RV. He called RV Weinstein for a while. I think he changed it because it's politically incorrect even for him.
Too, is it? It's so far incorrect even for him.
And of course, Dr. Chris Ryan has, I think, a Sprinter van, something like that, that's outfitted, and he just travels fucking everywhere. And it's one of those things that I've thought of, and I've looked at fifth wheels. You go to Burning Man, they got like the Arctic Wolf. The trick for
decked out, and that's kind of, we started looking at like a tow behind trailer too, like the little teardrops.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest issue with something like that, especially with wanting to go to Burning Man, is like, I need air conditioning. I'm not sleeping in the desert out there or without an escape, because from what I understand, I'm going to sleep during the day.
Barely.
Barely.
Yeah.
Right. So some air condition would be nice in that situation.
But outside of Burning Man's once a year at most,
but
right?
The rest of it, we travel a lot.
So the rest of it, that's what I want to get into, because, you listen to a guy like Henry Rollins on Rogan's, and he talks about, I'm not sure many people can paint the picture of why traveling is so important in life.
Better than him.
He's the dude. And from that, to shift your perspective to
everything,
to see different cultures. I mean, fuck, our country is full of different culture. It is full of it.
And man, it's super unique, right? I've been fortunate to travel quite a bit, not a crazy amount compared to freak friends that I have who really travel a lot. But man, I want to fuck off. Like that's the term. It's just fucking off for me. And so like, I want the ability, if I'm going to have this weird life that I don't have a 9-to-5 and I kind of get to do, like, I want to go. I've always loved traveling. Even before like I got the outside sales job that I got to travel. Like I remember being in high school and someone talking about like traveling salesmen. I'm like, you mean there's people whose jobs, they just go to the airport every week and go to a new place? This sounds awesome. And I did it and loved it. And now I'm doing it, but just to support the other things I have going. And so like, man, having that freedom, like with the truck being set up the way it is, like we were on our drive down to Sulphur to go see my mom for Thanksgiving, and she calls me, like we're 5 hours into the 11-hour drive or something, and she's like, "Hey, I've got the flu." This was on Tuesday, so you guys don't need to be here until Wednesday. I'm like, we're halfway there, and you made a big deal about us getting there early to hang out, like so. So we just detoured and went to a national forest and camped. Like we didn't plan that on the ride down, but everything's ready to go. And so having that other option of always like, we'll just punch out over there. We're fine.
Yeah. I think
being set up at camp, that's the ticket.
That's the key ingredient that Aaron Alexander and all these people talk about, Ben Greenfield. It's convenience. Everything we do, you brought up the TV dinner. Why is it so attractive? Because it's fucking convenient.
Yeah, because it's already there.
You don't have to cook a meal. You can just pop it in the microwave and 2 minutes later you're ready to eat. Now that's not good for you, but you can set up things that are good for you,
right,
and make them convenient, right? I bought 100. I know I've said this a million times, but I have 100 square feet of MMA mats in my living room. The reason for that is it's now convenient to get on the ground and wrestle, do jiu-jitsu, stretch, do yoga, whatever. It invites me to the floor.
Sure.
Which is important. I have a cold bath at my house. You do as well.
Yeah.
Because it invites us to use the cold bath. It's always fucking ready. It's always between 35 and 50 degrees.
I mean, look, a perfect
ready.
example of that. Like, so the rack that I've got or had in my garage, and it's now at my gym from Sornex, like I have a bar that goes in the middle of it. I've never been one who lifts in the actual rack. I always lift on the outside of it. And then inside the rack, I had my dip horns. And the reason I did that, I was like, because if I have to set those up, I'll never do dips. I need them ready and in place so that I'll use them, because I need 2 less steps to convince myself to use these. And that was always the same with the ice bath or the sauna. Like, if I've got to go to a place, I'm going to use it 30% as much as if I have it, I'm really going to get after it. And I can make it part of my daily practice and how I feel. Like, it's having the foam roller and some of the tempering tools available in the living room when we're sitting around, because, you know, maybe half the time I'll just get on the floor and start noodling around if we're watching a show.
Yeah.
And what better that is than like, oh, I wish I could get on the ground and like maybe do something that helps.
Yeah, but if it's rock hard because you got hardwood or
Right.
some laminate, it's not going to invite you there.
No,
it doesn't feel
right?
good. But yeah, with getting back to travel, you've systematically made it convenient to be able to go anywhere, anytime, to not have to load your truck. It's already got gear in it for everything. And obviously, I think you've taken it a step further than most people would.
Yes.
Right. But it's that invitation. It's the knowing.
Right. It's having the fridge. Yeah. We got rid of the ice chest and we wired up a 50-quart fridge in the back of the truck that's on this slider. And so we can cook and meal prep and take food with us, but we don't ever have to worry about buying ice. So you don't ever get that slosh that's in the bottom of your cooler, or, you know, your wet peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I'd have grown up with on road trips. So we have that's available. And again, it becomes that convenience of like, well, we've got the fridge. It's not a big deal. We always have food. So, I mean, even on long road trips, if we've prepped 3 or 4 days of, say, meat, even just simple ground meat, I mean, you can stop, when I was doing vertical, stop at any Chinese takeout place and just buy white rice. And then you're set. And you got rice and ground meat, mix them at a gas station into a different thing of Tupperware and microwave and get down the road. And all that is so much better than killing the hour going to a restaurant. It's that it kills momentum with all these stops. And so being able to stay on the road and move, and then having the tent set up, you know, it's a 5-minute ordeal for us to have everything completely deployed, ready to camp.
The tent's one of the coolest things I've seen. So it's on a rack.
Yeah, so it's on top of the truck, and the truck's relatively tall. And so, I mean, you're probably 7.5, 8 foot off the ground on top of that rack. So it's somewhere between tent and treehouse. It's kind of the feel that you have because you're up. And so you get this nice elevated safety feeling of like, no creepy crawlies are going to get in. But it's great. Like, so sleeping bags stay in the tent. They just fold up into it when we close it. So everything's ready to go. We have a couple, like 2 strands of twinkle lights in there that kind of keep it mellow. And man, you can just get up there and just once you're in it, it's great.
It's so cool.
And that option, and yeah, the truck, you know, being a 4-wheel drive and then getting a little bit of a lift on it and stuff like that, make it a hair more capable to get to places people aren't. Because your national forest, you can do whatever you want. You can disperse camp anywhere in them that you want. So find a logging road and just drive. And be like, oh, I like this bluff. We'll just set up shop here. Or once you get out west, you got all the Bureau of Land Management stuff. You got all this public land. You can do whatever you want to on. And man, getting out there and like not seeing people for 2 days, and, you know, driving up to Banff and having your stuff with you and not having to deal with the Airbnb or the camp or any of that type of stuff. And man, our country is so unique. Like, I think it gets shit on compared to the rest of the world for a lot of stuff, but it's so unique because, I mean, you have the landscape that is Miami, but you also have Montana. And then you've also got Sedona. Like, that's all the U.S. Like, nowhere else has that. You don't get to go to Scotland and be like, so where's you guys' desert? It doesn't. It just all looks like Scotland. Same with Iceland. Like, Iceland's a very unique landscape, but it looks like Iceland. There's never this blue, white sand beach, you know, and then you have the Pacific Northwest. And so, like, man, the U.S. is very, very diverse and very, very cool as far as land goes. And there's so much of it that's empty and big and beautiful. Like, we stumbled in, like, Post Falls, Idaho. We were just driving through this area. I hadn't had cell phone service in about an hour. It just keeps reading none, like just blank in the corner. And there's a pull off, and there were natural hot springs, like on the side of this river. So we hung out there for a couple hours and like soaked in natural hot springs, and then got in the river to do contrast, and then had our camp set up less than 30 minutes from it. You know, and like, we wouldn't have found that, but we were just, we'll go this way today. And that's for me what's important. And it's that if I'm not going to have the standard 9 to 5 and a place to be and the life I can build goes this direction, I want to wake up and do whatever the fuck I want to every day. That's to me the greatest thing I can do with my time is whatever I want to every day with the people I love. And I'm not stuck spending it doing obligated things. And that's kind of what the truck brings this freedom. Like that's the spaceship.
It's the ultimate freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And setting that up, I think that's a key missing ingredient. You know, we talk about plant medicines as tools for healing, also tools for changing perspective, but it's the break in life. It's creating, and even among plant medicines, like creating space for that event, not to do ayahuasca on the weekend and go back to work on Monday, but creating space for it around it. That's why going to Costa Rica, which you guys are going to do, or the Amazon can be very valuable because you create space before and after it. But creating a space in life in general, because most people listening to this do have a 9 to 5.
Yep.
I got a fucking 9 to 5.
Right.
It's not the same as most people's, but I do. I have a desk.
Yeah, you have responsibilities and a place to be. Yeah.
And I also have a family, you know, and so my ability to just up and leave isn't the same as yours. Right. But at the same time, if I can make that convenient, there's a lot of cool shit
and
to
it
see.
makes it that's the trick.
There's a lot of cool places I can take my family.
Well, you're in Austin, so you're not terribly far from Big Bend, which is an amazing national park.
That's southern Texas on the Rio Grande. Yeah,
so
there's a race there each year. It says
Marfa. Like there's so many cool places just in Texas that you guys could get into 6 hours. Right? And like, I mean, you could leave Friday afternoon when you get off of work, camp that night, and then you're there. But it's a matter of it being convenient. Now, to me, it's not get off of work on Friday and then figure out how to pack the truck. It's like, it's ready to go. Like, just throw some stuff in a duffel bag. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Even if you didn't have the truck and you had a minivan and all that other shit, you could have a grab and go setup of all the stuff you need. And you just take that out of the garage, toss it in your trunk, and you're ready to go.
Now, they make some cool stuff. I looked into those for a while too. So they make kind of a pull behind trailer that's like a little bit lifted with off-road tires on it. A handful of different companies make them. And inside that will be like a pull-out kitchen, spare battery, and then the tent mounts to that. So figure all your camping stuff lives in this trailer, and it's always ready to go. So you just back up, hook your truck to it.
And how much will those run? 5, 10?
They'll get ugly.
Okay.
You can spend anything you want to on them. I think Smitty Built makes a pretty cheap, affordable version. And then, I mean, you go Patriot Campers. I mean, you can do $35,000.
Yeah. And those fifth wheels are cheaper than I thought, but you're still looking at, 35 to 50, upwards of 80 sometimes.
Yeah.
So, if you're pulling something in like a 350 diesel, then you can pull some of those $80,000. Basically, it's an RV that's just being towed without its own driving mechanism.
I think I took some years off the life of the Tundra when I moved the garage gym stuff all the way to St. Louis. I loaded it all in a U-Haul. I don't know how much weight I had in that trailer, but all of it. And there's so many times driving back, it was just super sketchy. It felt so heavy, and like would just get shaking over the road and try to accelerate out of it. Just got there and I was like, okay, let's unload this and then get rid of this trailer and just be very thankful that no one's dead.
Yeah. But I mean, having it all in the truck, that's like such a cool thing because the truck's capable. It's ready to go, and you're not towing something that's going to make it a little wiry on black ice or some of these harder conditions.
And that's been so cool for Bonnie and I in St. Louis because there's some really neat stuff within an hour of St. Louis. Like you can get pretty far into, like, I think Mark Twain National Forest. There's some other good spots. There's some great mountain bike trails. And so like the last week that we were home was like a Tuesday, and was like, let's just go camp tonight. And we just got in the truck and left. Like we didn't have anything to think about. We grabbed the pillows off the bed and got in the truck and left. And that was it. And we'll wear these clothes tomorrow and come home. We'll be home at 10 a.m. It's not a big deal. We just want to go get somewhere, have a fire, sit outside that's quiet. Our cell phones don't work. And sometimes I need that level of removal to leave the phone alone. Because it's too easy that it's work. Like, while I have the freedom, 100% of my income is based on the cell phone and communicating with people. And so that's my job. But I sometimes got to get away from it. because it's too easy to, with what I do for a living, like you'll forget that like, oh, it's Sunday. That's why my team in Kansas isn't answering anything, is because they're not at work. And I'm like, my bad, guys. Like I don't know what day of the week it is anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably a good sign. Is like
That's a really good
no
sign.
concept what day of the week it is. So that's good.
That's and I love that. I'm actually, it's one of the things that I've, in following you and being a close friend of yours, have come to really appreciate, is the way you create space in life. And it's certainly a mirror into things that I need to do more of, because I've been traveling a lot for work. We spent 4.5 or 5 weeks in Central America this summer alone. We went to Costa Rica for 10 days. We went to Puerto Vallarta with my family. We went to, and so Bear got to go to Mexico for the first time with all my nephews, his cousins that are all around the same age. We went to Cabo San Lucas
just
with Ob and the
of
crew.
Savages. You just had Lord of the Flies down there with all the kids.
we really have had, I certainly count it as a blessing, all of these circumstances, but 95% of them are work. Right. They're work related. I'm in Tulum for Fit for Service.
Of course.
But I'm working, and it's work. And it's working in paradise, but it's work.
But you're on. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard one to explain to people, that I've had hard jobs, and holding conversations with my friends, I can't list as a hard job. But you're tired after 2 podcasts in a day, especially like if they were free form and you ran 2 hours on each, like you're done. Because it's thinking of the conversation. It's different than just you sitting on the couch with your buddy. Yeah. And so there's some time that you need to figure out that decompression zone too.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the medicine in 2020 will be, is in actually utilizing being in the center of this country. I know from moving here that it's super convenient for work. When I need to fly to Cali or New York, it's a short flight. If I fly to Costa Rica, it's a short flight. I'm centrally located. It's awesome. But now I can utilize that in the truck to get out and just create that space and do it with my family and get Bear out in nature and really explore what we have here. And that's a big, big thank you to you for that,
dude.
Brother.
And I'm happy to point in the direction of what I've figured out and not figured out via that build, to how to escape.
Hell yeah.
It's for me, I also love the build process. Like I like tweaking and building and trying to get things completely dialed to this never obtainable perfect. So I guess that's really what it ends up being, right? Like it's never perfect. It's always like, well, if we did this, that would be cool. And what if we changed? And then you're like, oh, we never use it.
Yeah.
There's been like 2 things that have been super rad. One being the water tank. I bought this company, Waterport makes it, and it's like a 4 or 5 gallon tank, and it's removable, but you can fill it with water. It's got a hose attachment, and then I can pressurize it either with a bike pump or with the onboard air that I've got. And then I've got a shower. I got a hose that we can spray off with, and it's way more than enough for both of us to clean off. That we use every single day that we've camped, whether that's clean out dishes and rinse pots, or if I've been on a mountain bike ride, clean the bike off, any of these things, it's wonderful. The other one is this step that we picked up at REI for like $20. It's this metal hook that hooks into where your door shuts. Like the back door has this like metal kind of a U shape that attaches to the body and frame. And so it hooks to that and then goes down and sits. So it's a leverage point. And since that's so stable, that now becomes an easy thing to stand on to reach the top of the truck. Mm. You don't have to climb on the tires. You don't have to do any of this. And like it puts you up 2 feet higher than just standing in the doorway. That thing has been, I will buy a second one the next time I come across one, so I have one on both sides of the truck so I don't have to walk around. That's the convenience I'm looking for.
That's super cool. Yeah, I want to outfit the truck like that. Well, let's talk about some travel that you've been doing. You said you did 3 weeks in Iceland.
3 weeks in Iceland. Yeah, I just got back. It's man, that place is special. I just love it. And I don't know what my favorite time of year is currently. Fall's pretty good because you start getting northern lights. And I don't know if you've ever caught that.
No.
But the aurora are really neat. it's very strange and very surreal to kind of be out somewhere, especially you can get away from Reykjavik within an hour of Reykjavik. You're in the middle of nowhere and it's black, darker than 3 foot up a cow's ass, if you were looking for a comparison. It's so dark, and then it's cold, and then, I mean, the sky just lights up green, and then it moves. So I haven't had the chance of psychedelics and Aurora, but I'd really like to.
Yeah, same.
I think that would play very, very nicely together. It'd be tough to line it up because they don't last all night. Like, you may end up only getting them for an hour.
Oh, wow.
And
that'd be a spectacular show for an hour, though.
Be a spectacular show for an hour. That's really cool. Like, getting to see that it's pretty neat. And then Iceland itself, it's one of the few places that I try to describe to people as, like, I don't know what frequency I operate at or what the vibrations of that place are, but they line up. It's the second wheels touch down for me. Anxiety drops quite a bit. I breathe better. It's a different culture. Everyone's really polite. It's kind of this, it's a really strange thing, right? Their culture, because there's only 300,000 people and they've been around since the year 800. And so there's no anonymity. It is this big tribe that you don't get to be an asshole because you're going to see that person again. And so everyone's nice to each other because of it. Like, they don't lock their doors. Like, there isn't an issue with crime, and it's because you can't hide. It's an island, and we all know who you are. And there's something to be said about that. I don't know how that translates back or if we ever get to go back to that. Probably not. But it is cool to see, and it's cool to kind of be part of it. And I'm very, very welcomed over there. I think this is my 12th time I've been to Iceland. So I've been once or twice a year since like 2009. And it's easy now. Like, I'm staying with a friend and we've got a great gym to train at, and it's just great. And so we usually rent this camper van while we're there too, this little company. And so we'll stay a few days at my buddy Hasey's house and wash clothes and cook and prep a few meals and go to the gym and then take off for 2 days and just go find random campsite or a road and set up, and no one bothers you.
That's incredible.
It's the best. And just tuck in and kind of get in sleeping bags and get cozy in the back of the van.
Man,
it's good, man. It's a upper class homeless, as I'd like to describe my life. It's a very, very comfortable homeless I'm trying to survive in.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you've been camping all over the place. You went to Colorado.
Yeah.
Where else have you been going?
So this summer we did a month. So we left St. Louis. We camped in Kansas. Randomly found this campsite in Kansas that had like 30 miles of single track mountain bike trails. This big lake. Like, it looked like they had just put a piece of Colorado dead in the middle of Kansas. It just doesn't make sense that it's there because the rest of Kansas is a waste of anyone's time. Just get through it as quickly as possible. And then, a couple days in Denver. So we went around and hiked and checked all that out, and stayed with a friend of ours, Jen, and which I don't think she's ever actually been at her house when we stay there, but nonetheless, we stayed at her place. And then made our way to Salt Lake City and hung out there. I really like Salt Lake City. I think Salt Lake City is a place I need to explore more of because it's what Denver should look like. It's nestled in the mountains, whereas Denver's just sitting on the plain and the mountains are behind it. Whereas Salt Lake is stuck right in the mountains, and in 10 minutes you're in ski place, and it's a pretty cool spot. And it doesn't seem crazy expensive. They have a major airport. It could check a lot of interesting boxes.
Yeah,
of a
Utah
place to live,
is incredible. I ran a ultra marathon in Zion, and I saw how close they do. It's like ultra adventures, and they go around the four corners of those states.
Yeah.
But they have Bryce Canyon is a run. They do Zion. They do a couple other
Everything's like 4 or 5 hours from Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm. And you can fly into Vegas even and check off a bunch of them with a super short drive.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about that. And my sister was considering moving to Utah, and I was just like, it's so beautiful there.
Utah's super
It's
rad.
incredible.
People are super nice. I mean, got the whole Mormon thing going, and that's interesting.
Did you ever see the Book of Mormon?
Oh, yeah.
I saw it for the first time with Nate Quarry, who grew up Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, all right.
And so I loved it. It was fucking awesome. And he loved it as well. But obviously he had a different take because there's certainly some scarring that happens in growing up in a cult.
Sure.
and
Calling it a
and
cult.
that's, you know, straight from his mouth, you know.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to experience that with him and then to talk after. But yeah, total side note. Believe whatever you want to believe.
Sure.
So,
Right on. The only real hang up I've got of the Mormon thing is that they don't bring up that Joseph Smith was 14 a whole lot when he found the tablets and everybody took his word for these things he couldn't produce any physical proof of. He was 14.
no big deal.
No big deal. I wasn't that bright at 14, so I'm glad no one was taking my word on a lot of stuff. We'd be in a bad spot. So left there, went up through Boise and through Idaho and then into the Pacific Northwest and made our way out to the beach and camped in the sand and then through to Montana, stayed with a few friends there. Montana's rad. We've got some friends that live just outside of Glacier National Park. And so stay there. And then we did a 4-hour drive up to Banff and camped for a couple nights in Banff. And man, Banff National Park in Alberta, like where Lake Louise is and all that. And Lake Louise is probably the most photographed thing for Instagram as far as landscapes go. It's this beautiful turquoise blue lake next to, it's like sank in the mountains. And
Wow.
it is extremely crowded, like 2 giant parking lots for it. And then like another parking lot, an overflow lot that's 3 times as big as both those lots. And like a shuttle bus that just brings people all day to come to the lake. It's crowded and that makes it suck, but it's not overrated. It is that beautiful. But you can hike around the outside of it and there's no people. I mean, if you go another half mile down the trail around the lake, there's no people. And man, the place is Banff's pretty amazing as far as places I've got to go. I really want to get back up there and spend more time. Got to see a few bears and some other stuff kind of creeping around. So, and then back to Montana and then through, we went down to Bozeman and met a couple of the guys that I work with for Stay Classy Meats and got to see their bison farm and a big 2,200 pound white bison they have. They're breeding. They're a big male called Big Medicine.
Damn, that's so
Dude,
cool.
Big gnarly guy. And got to just cruise around the truck, like the ranch that the bison are on that we went and checked out. It's like 16,000 acres, which is obnoxious. You figure a square mile is 640 acres. So that ranch is bigger than Rhode Island, I think.
Wow.
Right? Isn't that a little strange that there's private landowners in the country that own more than a state? Like the King Ranch in Texas is over 100,000 acres. Like
Where
you
is
can
that
take
located?
big tours of it, like down south toward Victoria.
Okay.
Like they've got big tours and fishing trips and all types of stuff you can do down there. It's
And a
rad.
lot of them are huntable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I've been looking into more because hunting is surprisingly expensive.
Yeah.
And it definitely is.
Yeah,
when
it's
you're,
that people talk about like, well, I'll harvest my own meat. Yeah, like by the pound. Why don't you let me know what that costs versus going to Whole Foods?
It's the experience for sure.
Of course.
No doubt about it. But looking for ways to make that more accessible and convenient. I'm just thinking like I get to go on a hunt, which will be bow and rifle. I'm just going to hunt with the bow because it's something I really want to master.
Yeah.
But that'll be not far from Austin, I think in December or January with Dr. Paul Saladino,
Nice.
the carnivore doc, and he's got a local guide and a bunch of other cool people are going to be there for it. But just like exploring hunting Texas for a while, and then make my way back out to Hawaii, those kind of things. Cause that to me is kind of the epic hunting trip. It's the one that it's worth saving up for. But
for sure, right? Because you can get out there and access deer and all types of really cool stuff. Guy and I grew up hunting, and for whatever reason, the older I've gotten, I've kind of just it's not really for me.
But you love nature.
Do love nature. I like looking at animals. I just don't feel the need to kill them, but I like eating them. So I realize there's a mix up here. But I fully support like the hunting and all that with Texas. I mean, especially because we have species of animals now due to conservation in Texas and these ranches that are thriving, that are now extinct in Africa where they came from. But since West Texas is such a very similar landscape and temperature, these animals are doing great because we're hunting them. And so, they're culling herds and keeping them healthy and doing the right thing by by management. And so I'm glad all this exists. yeah, I've got to see both sides of it. You know, I'm not into the whole poaching shit's so lame.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that we're taking care of these species, especially on these big giant ranches that kind of, you know, as long as animals aren't caged.
Yeah, and it's got to be fair too. You know, I mean,
Yep.
picking off a deer while it's eating at a trough, I think is
Yeah,
you might as well just go buy something from the butcher, which I'm not opposed to either. You know,
I mean, I remember going on a hunt for the old job, and like we had some customers that we had brought out, and as we're out there, like I got sent to a blind to just kind of go spot. You know, hey, let's see if any good bucks show up. If they do, let's take a photo and let's try to track so that we know this guy comes out for customers. And he's like, hey, if you want any hogs show up, you can shoot a hog. Any rabbits show up, shoot a rabbit. We'll cook tonight. I couldn't shoot any of the hogs or rabbits because there were too many deer in the way. Right. Like at one point I counted 30 deer around the feeder. And like, I mean, I could have attacked them with a rock. Like, I wouldn't call this hunting. I didn't need camo. I didn't need this high-powered rifle. Like, but hey, I get it. Whatever. It's a business people are into. It'd just be real weird to shoot a big deer like that and then put the mount on my wall like me and this thing had some battle.
The trophy thing is a weird thing. JP Sears had a fucking great Thanksgiving video. Did you get to see it?
No, I didn't.
So he made a tofurky, a tofu, you know, and it's like, you know, all the best jokes kind of fuck up everyone at the same time.
Yep.
Like South Park does. Like you just leave no one's not fucked with, right? And so he makes this turkey out of tofu and then he attacks it. He beats it to death with his gun, you know, and he starts dumping beet juice on it to show like, here's the fake blood, you know, because vegans want to make everything look like an animal, you know, like the fucking Beyond Burger and stupid shit like that. Like, we're against this, but we're going to try to recreate it through, and I know we're running out of time here, but
no worries.
Yeah, we're going to recreate it so it looks like cheese, or it tastes like cheese, or it looks like a hot dog. So anyways, he does that with the turkey. And then he fucking talks about how proud he is of his kill. He takes the trophy picture with it, holding the head up of the animal after he beats it to death with his gun, is fake tofu turkey. And then just gets into all that portion of, you know, like the
trophy hunting thing.
Kind of the ridiculous part of hunting. But yeah, he's like, yeah, it was really, it was a battle of me versus this animal and shooting it at a safe distance, you know, putting my life in danger, you know, and he's like getting into that. And it was just, it's a great video. I'll link to that in the show notes for people. It's funny, you know, it doesn't matter which side of the corn you're on.
Yeah, I mean,
if you hunt, burning hunters, I hunt as well, and I love it. I'm not burning vegans, even though I think it's a poor decision health-wise, and it's definitely not a solution to climate change or anything else that's going on in the world.
Look, I think if you want to eat non-animal based protein because you have an ethical reason against it, I'm all for you. If that's the stance you'd like to take, I got your back. But if it's for a health concern, it's just not backed by anything. And if it's for your own morals and ethics, right on. That's a choice you get to make as a human.
But where it gets sticky is that you don't make that decision for me. Right. And I think that's where Rob Wolf and his new book, and obviously I mentioned Paul Saladino is coming on the show in a week or so. It won't air in a week after this, but I'm going to record with him in about a week. You know, he's got his book coming out, and he really, really gets into a lot of the actual science around animal byproduct, around animal waste, you know, methane gas, CO2 emissions, all this stuff. And for people who want to know, you know, again, it's not me just fucking, I see a lot of opinions on this show. There is a book called The Soil Will Save Us, and it talks about how free-range cattle and bison sequester carbon into the ground, heal the soil through the microbiome of the soil, and sequester carbon for up to 500 years because they walk through their own shit and stomp it into the ground.
Well, giant herds of buffalo that used to cruise the plains, right? Because they would shit somewhere and then birds come and pick through the shit, and then the seeds go back into the earth, and then they grow back to grass, and then you would have herds of wolves, or not herds, or I guess a pack of wolves, pick off the weak bison from around the outskirts. And this all worked well and kept soil very healthy. Factory farming is really tough for me to get behind.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
I'm very, very fortunate to live in a world that I don't have to get my protein that way. But it's tough, right? Because how do you have affordable protein for 330 million people and it all be free range grass fed? That's the hang up. I'm glad that I've got the option to cast my vote with my dollar the way I want to, but I don't need you to do the same. This is my dollar. I don't care how you spend yours.
Yeah, I encourage people. I mean, fuck, there's a lot of red flags around the purchase of Whole Foods from Amazon. What's going to happen? That kind of shit. But one of the things that's a positive that nobody can argue with is 100% grass-fed, grass finished, not grash finished. No Sean Connery here. The best type of grass-fed, grass-finished cattle, their ground beef is, I think, price locked at $5.99 a pound now.
Wow.
Right. So it's way more affordable on a consistent basis if you're going to go to a Whole Foods. If you want to go in on a cow with 3 other friends and get a quarter cow each, but you're purchasing the whole cow, that's an excellent way to get really good meat, right? Yep. And your boys at Stay Classy Meats, Butcher Box has been a sponsor of the show, and they make very good products as well.
Yeah, there's definitely options out there.
Yeah, you know,
I think those things have done a bigger thing for me, mitigating pain and feeling better. I think nutrition's been a big part of it, which makes total sense. If I was just shoving mud into the gas tank of my truck, it runs really poorly. So why would my body operate differently? The fuel I'm putting into it is going to depend on how well the machine runs, since that's where it's getting the energy. Like, that makes complete sense to me on I like dumbing things down for my rock-filled head. And so I'm like, well, this makes sense, right? That if we put better fuel in it, it tends to run better, run a little smoother, and
everything works better from your state of your cognition, your mental energy, your inflammation. All the old injuries seem to vanish. All that stuff happens because of what you put in your body.
Yeah, you don't get that spikes with insulin and the weird hunger, and then the dying in the middle of the afternoon, craving sugar and all that stuff that comes with it, man. And then, IBS or, bowel issues. Like, man, when you do feel it, like the first time that everything kind of lines up. And like, for me, I like the fasting in the mornings. And when all that feels right, it's like, oh, this is simpler. Like, the biggest thing I could recommend to people with a fasting, especially the longer fast, was a side effect of that. Like, I did a 2-day, and the side effect of that I thought was interesting is you have a lot more time to do stuff because you're not thinking about food, or you're thinking about it, but you're not getting any. So you don't have to go to the store or go to a place or cook, or you're just like, oh, well, I don't know what to do that next hour because I don't have to eat.
Yeah, it frees up bandwidth also.
Right.
That's something that I mentioned before, like why a float tank? Why sensory deprivation? Well, when you take all these external factors out, like sound, body temperature, gravity, because you're pretty much weightlessness in there. You take out sight, it's pitch black. You add all those components, and that frees space in the brain, and it allows you to see things from different angles. It opens up perspective. It opens up the bandwidth because it's clearing. Food takes a lot of resources to process within our body. Even good, clean food does. So when you eliminate that, you increase the bandwidth. And shit you've been trying to solve for months, that intuition just gets kicked on, and you're able to see things and look outside the box from different angles on it. So I think of fasting, even though I consider it to be a spiritual practice, it's very much a logical practice. It's very much, like, what's the term I'm looking for? There's a triangle of meditation and, damn it, what are the 3? Well, anyways, my point is we have this doing, and then we have this being. And you could say being is a meditative place. But in between the two of doing and being is contemplation. It's the soft thought where you're not attached to it, that you can actually unravel what's going on in life. And contemplation is way better when you've taken out some of these external factors, either contemplating in a float tank or contemplating on a fast. And so I think there's a lot of medicine in that too.
I agree, man. And everything to me, I guess I've always enjoyed the experimenting, and whether that's physical training and trying a new product or tool or a new exercise or all right, let's go try hot yoga. and something I would put into my off-season training once my season was over. Okay, let's start rebuilding the base again and get the body moving again and get rid of some of these aches and pains and reconnect. And try it. But so many people will just shut stuff down from the idea of it, of like, no. Like, what do you mean? You don't know. And like, I guess one of the tools that a friend of mine who went through AA and all that got that I really liked was, kind of the deal with the higher power. I would say my friend is not Christian in any way, but that's a big part of the AA thing. And he said, like, talking to the person, kind of having a struggle with that bit of it. And they're like, well, look, do you think there's parts of the Bible that are valuable? And he's like, yeah. He's like, when you think there's parts that aren't? And he's like, of course. And he's like, so just use the parts that are good and don't stress yourself out about those other bits. And I think training or travel or, any of that you can add in, like, it doesn't all have to get lumped into this. It's all great or it's all bad. It could be good for you and maybe not totally beneficial for me, but find out, experiment, and maybe you find that thing that's really important to you. And one of those for me was travel and being outside. And I didn't realize I missed that as much about training for the Highland Games as I did. Was I got to throw outside 4 days a week and compete outside and be kind of alone. And even though it's a green field with grass in the middle, outside of a parking lot, I'm outside. I'm not in the gym.
Yeah.
It is fresh air. It is a green space. It is this clearing time that I get this mindfulness because I was good enough at throwing that I don't have to focus on throwing the whole time. I can just go through some movements and let my head clear. And so finding that proficiency in a thing is meditative. And try stuff and play and experiment and have fun with it and see what's out there. And hell, at least know you don't like a thing. Nothing wrong with that, right? Be like, no, that is not for me. Yeah. Like the fermented shark in Iceland. I know how that tastes, and it's not good. I recommend you try it, but I know it tastes bad. It tastes like a big mouth of piss.
Well, shit, dude. We got to jump on your podcast now.
Yeah.
What's the name of your podcast?
The So podcast.
The So.
Yeah, So. It's named that since it's typically how I'll stutter in the middle of talking to people. It's like, so. And so we just went with that. I didn't want to have it, too dedicated to lifting or any of these other things. I really wanted it open-ended so I can talk to whoever I want to, whether that's experts in a field like yourself or Kelly or hell, I Stone Cold on for an episode, but I've also had my best friend since third grade, Dant. It's conversations with people I like.
Fuck yeah, brother.
So
it's excellent. Always excellent having you in town.
Always a pleasure.
And always excellent having you on the show. Where can people follow you online?
I hate Matt Vincent on Instagram. I think if you search Matthew Vincent, I'll pop up. I think I've become the most popular Matthew Vincent. This is going well for me. I have a YouTube channel, Matthew Vincent, and then the So podcast.
Dope, brother.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
Cheers.